I'm actually going to show you a little behind the scenes of the greenhouse I use. Please pardon the obnoxious loud voice of a neighbor. Very inappropriate for this time in the morning. I hope they can hear me, by the way. I rarely show the quote-unquote behind the scenes of the plants I grow in their young stages, essentially because I'm a perfectionist and I don't like people to see what I do to get plants to where I like them to be, and various imperfections, so forth and so on, and the mess that I have in the greenhouse here. But I thought I'd show anyone who cares what I have going, because it's been kind of an exceptional experience this year. And I have a lot of exciting stuff growing here. This is probably my proudest achievement, just because I don't want to give too much away, but it's part of a larger quote-unquote project that I'm working on. These are Scaviola Takata bushes that I grew from seed. Everything here I grew from seed or rhizome in the greenhouse, or mini greenhouse, which you'll see. These are found in the Pacific Islands. Scaviola Takata is their botanical name, so to speak. Colloquially known as also beach naupaka or naupaka. That's the Polynesian or Hawaiian name. These are prolifically grown in the Hawaiian Islands. I'm sure if you've been to Hawaii, French Polynesia, Solomon Islands, any of the Central or South Pacific Islands, even parts of Florida and Southern California coastal areas, you'll see these bushes. They're large bushes that are largely grown as landscaping plants on coastlines. They have shiny leaves, and they bush out to about 5 or 6 feet tall. They're frequently trimmed as hedges or rough hedges, not with, in other words, not with defined borders like box hedges, but they're trimmed neatly. They have rounded leaves like you see here, and they're really nice bushes. Anyway, this is part of a larger test group, so to speak. I have others that are now also in seed that I'm not going to show you because they're not as nice as these at the moment. Anyway, I'm going to, if this all works out well, which I think it will, I'm going to submit these to a horticultural group in California with well, I don't want to tell you too much, but it could work out very well for some problematic areas in California in particular. You probably saw, as I was showing you, the Naupaka, Scaviola Takata, these little plants. These are actually Cordyline terminalis, also colloquially known as tea plants or Hawaiian tea plants. I grew these through cuttings. Initially I rooted them in water. That's one of 2 traditional ways. Then once the roots come out and little leaflets are produced on the tea logs, you put them in soil and you get this, little tea plants. Once again, if you've gone to Hawaii, you've seen these growing there all over the place, prolific. Also in Florida, and once again in the South Pacific, Central Pacific, and also in Southern California. They're beautiful plants, frequently red, variegated varieties, all kinds of colors, even purplish, blackish, believe it or not. They're wonderful plants. I don't have another one in the greenhouse. I have some outside. Anyway, these are doing very nicely, and these will eventually all be for sale, as will everything in here, actually, through my retail greenhouse business. So these are, and you can see there are little secondary plantlets coming up here. Pardon my camera work, I'm not a videographer by training, but you get the point. You can see a log coming out of the soil here, and this one you can see a little plantlet, the secondary plantlet coming up, which is a surprise. I wasn't expecting that, but I'm welcoming it. These are various varieties of Heliconia. I don't know the botanical names on these various varieties. You see, I've had some bug damage here, insect damage. Initially, when they sprouted from the rhizome, I think I've handled that already. It's not going to affect them too much in the long run. They will definitely have that outside. So, as is already obvious, I grew these all from rhizomes, which I ordered from a great company in Hawaii named Plant Group Hawaii, and I'm actually plugging that company because they are excellent. They have all kinds of rhizomes for Heliconia, ginger plants, all kinds of stuff, and they are very responsive, which is really these days not easy to come by in the horticultural scene. So if you're interested in growing rhizomes for ginger, Heliconia, things like that, I highly recommend Plant Group Hawaii. So what we have here, Hot Rio Nights, Heliconia. I'm just using the commercial names, colloquial names. Hot Rio Nights, and right now that's all I can think of, but there are a few other varieties. I apologize. Most exciting, well, no, actually, here's a ginger called Pinstripe Ginger, which I think you may be familiar with, and needless to say, that's why it's called Pinstripe Ginger. The leaves are nicely ornamented by pinstripes, like pinstripe suit. There's a little bit of insect damage, and that's apparent from the, or in the kind of ruffled edges of the leaves there. So, but that'll resolve. In fact, there's a new shoot coming up there that looks unaffected completely. So that's going to be a nice plant. Over here is a very rarely distributed Alpinia Ginger. I recently acquired also from Plant Group Hawaii. Roxburghi. And very few people have this in this country. I believe it's from Thailand, don't quote me on that. And as I said, I recently planted this, and as you can see, there's a new shoot coming up. I must have planted this about 3 weeks ago, so I'm happy to see there's a new shoot coming up. So that's pleasant surprise, not a surprise, but I'm very pleasantly happy with that. And I think the big claim to fame, other than their beautiful blooming habit and lush luxuriant leaves is the fragrance. I think they claimed that this was one of the only very fragrant Alpinia varieties. However, I beg to differ because I find that shell ginger, Alpinia zarambet, is quite fragrant. Both the variegated and even the original, quote-unquote original recipe, the non-variegated, is fragrant when you get up close to the blooms. But apparently this one is super fragrant, so we'll see. I'll let you know. And so that's that. Here's some costus. I have several costus plants. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce this. You can see this. Costus Camosus Gomosus. And they're beautiful plants, as you know. If you know anything about tropical horticulture, their blooms look similar to the Alpinia Ginger in a way. They have red, kind of conical blooms similar to the typical Alpinia purpurata, but they're of a smaller stature. Very nice plants, much hardier, do more reliably in Southern California, so they're starting to come up too. They have an interesting structure also, kind of tubular, so that's nice. Put these outside once they get going a little more. These are pink dwarf Singapore plumeria, obtusa, Singapore obtusa, pink dwarf plumeria cuttings that I'm rooting here. This is my second batch, and they're wonderful plants. They're not so dwarf actually when they get going. They can get up to, well, I've seen one actually it's about 12 feet here, and they've wonderful pink, typical Singapore obtusa type blooms. However, they're pink, and of course they have that typical pungent Singapore obtusa fragrance, citrusy fragrance, and they're wonderful. And I found that they do better in Southern California in the ground for some reason. When you plant regular Singapore obtusa in the ground in Southern California, they rot very easily. Blacktip fungus and rot. However, when you plant these, they take off and they have no issues. I don't know why. It's just they just work here, and they're wonderful. And in Southern California's year-round, moderate to what I call subtropical climate. I don't subscribe to this Mediterranean climate theory. It's more of a dry subtropical climate. Anyway, they retain their leaves year-round and bloom off and on in the winter, at least where I am. So anyway, that's all the plants I'm willing to subject you to for now. I guess I'll update when things become more presentable. I've skipped over a couple things because I can't remember the names, and I'm too embarrassed to, admit it by showing you them, because they're kind of obvious and I just can't remember the names. I don't want to look like a fool, even though I am. Anyone who knows me knows that I am. So that's it. Whoops, that was my finger. So we'll let you go. Mahalo nui.